Thank you, Carl. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello to everyone on the webcast. In a little over 3 months, we're going to be having the Feast of Tabernacles. And we have a long-standing tradition in the Church of God to have opening night services on the Feast of Tabernacles. Why? Why do we have services on the opening night of the Feast of Tabernacles? Yes, we will hear a message on the millennial theme. Often there's a lot of administrative announcements. But is an opening night service only a recent tradition of the Church of God? Or is there an ancient biblical foundation why we have opening night services in addition to giving us the opportunity of hearing a message on the overall purpose of the feast? Today I want to show a biblical reason for opening night services and encourage everyone to make your travel plans so that you can be present at opening night services for the feast this year. Let's go to John chapter 7, the Gospel of John chapter 7. John chapter 7, verse 2, it says, "Now the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles was at hand." So Jesus is talking with his physical family. His brothers said, well, go up from here and go to Judea. So they started a conversation about going up to Jerusalem for the Feast of Tabernacles. And Jesus told them in verse 8, he told his brothers, you go up to this feast. Now that phrase, go up, is something we're going to see again several times in this sermonette. So that's an important idea about going up to the feast. So Jesus told his brothers, his family, you go up to the feast. He said, I am not yet going up to the feast, for my time has not yet fully come. Because he knew that if he went then, openly, the Jews might try to arrest him and crucify him then, but he was going to be waiting until the next Passover in about 6 more months before that would happen. So he told his brothers to go up to the feast. So Jesus also, verse 10, when his brothers had gone up, he also went up to the feast, not openly, but as it were in secret. And so then the Jews started looking for him, and Jesus started preaching openly. So Jesus did preach at the Feast of Tabernacles. All Christians should follow his example to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. We should also go up and keep the feast. His words were not just for his immediate family at that time. They apply to us today, now. So I want to make an interesting observation, is that fall opening night services for the Feast of Tabernacles, it opens 8 special days of worship. So you have an opening night service, and then you have 7 days of the Feast of Tabernacles, and the 8th day. So that's 8 days of worship, special worship. But there is a symmetry and a parallel to the spring feasts, because Passover is also a night service. And Passover opens 8 days of spring worship. You have the Passover, then you have the 7 days of unleavened bread. So we know that God is a God of balance and order, and this is one possible manifestation of that mind. Now let's turn, please, with me to Psalm 120. Psalm 120. Now Psalm 120 is the first of a series of psalms called Songs of Ascents, or Songs of Going Up. There's 15 of them. It's like a special section in the Bible. And what does going up mean? Songs of Ascent. So again, these are 15 psalms, and they're each one labeled at the top of their Song of Ascents or going up. Well, what does that mean? Well, my research has indicated about 5 possible explanations for this, and I'll go through them. The first explanation is that in the temple courtyard, there was an ultra-wide stairway that consisted of 15 large semicircular steps that ascended into the intersection of the courtyard. The musical Levites, whose job it was to accompany temple services with song and instrumental music, would stand on these steps and sing these 15 songs. So that's one explanation. Another explanation is that these 15 songs of ascents, these songs were sung by worshipers as they were on their journey up to Jerusalem for the pilgrim feast 3 times a year. A third explanation is that the songs were sung on a very high or ascendant musical note. A fourth explanation is that the song started on a low note and then musically went up higher. The fifth explanation is that the songs were sung by Jews as they were coming back from Babylon to Jerusalem in the times of Ezra. Most commentators agree with choices 1 and 2. Those are the preferred choices. Now, the subjects of this group of songs seems to indicate a progression from the Day of Trumpets through Atonement to Tabernacles. Some have suggested that the songs were sung starting with Psalm 120 on the Day of Trumpets, on the lowest step of the temple steps. Then each day the temple choir would rise one step and sing the next song. It is hard to confirm this, but it is an attractive thought. So let's see, what is the subject of Psalm 120? Psalm 120, a song of ascents. In my distress I cried to the Lord, and he heard me. Deliver my soul, O Lord, from lying lips and from a deceitful tongue. What shall be given to you? What shall be done to you, you false tongue? Sharp arrows of the warrior with coals of the broom tree. Woe is me that I dwell in Meshech, that I dwell among the tents of Kedar. My soul has dwelt too long with one who hates peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. So what are the themes we see here in Psalm 120? We see a time of distress. We see a time of war. We see a time of a false prophet or a lying tongue. We see that some of God's people are dwelling in Meshech. Well, where's that? And our best understanding is that Meshech is in the area around Moscow today, or generally where Russia is. So when you put all these themes together, especially like, I am for peace, but when I speak, they're for war. It does seem to be that the subject of Psalm 120 has themes that go very well with the themes of what we understand of the Day of Trumpets, which is a time of war, a time of the false prophet and religious deception, and then, again, culminating in the trumpet plagues in Revelation and Christ's return eventually. So let's say that that's possible, a connection with Psalm 120, the Day of Trumpets. So let's go 10 songs in, and let's go to Psalm 129. Psalm 129. I'll just read a few verses of this one. A song of ascents. Many a time they've afflicted me from my youth, let Israel now say. Many a time they've afflicted me from my youth, yet they have not prevailed against me. The plowers plowed on my back, they made their furrows long. But the Lord is righteous. He has cut in pieces the cords of the wicked. So what would this somehow perhaps be compared to? Well, I'm going to go very quickly to Isaiah 58. Isaiah 58 and verse 6. Isaiah 58 and verse 6. It talks here, it says, is this not the fast that I have chosen? To loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, to let the oppressed go free, and that you break every yoke? So it seems like the subject of Psalm 129, going back there, could be where people had been afflicted by evil, and yet God breaks the cords of the wicked one. And we know that in a righteous fast, a fast that God is pleased with, the cords of wickedness are broken as well. So that could be a connection with the Day of Atonement. Now let's go to Psalm 133, getting closer to the Feast of Tabernacles. And Psalm 133, it just starts out, behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. And again, as people would come together, gather together before the feast, some people would arrive a bit early, family groups would come, there'd be joy in seeing people that they hadn't seen for months or maybe years. They'd get together for meals and so forth. It is joyous and wonderful for brethren to dwell together in unity. So that seems to, again, go along with the progression heading towards the feast, people coming together ahead of the Feast of Tabernacles. And then you arrive in Psalm 134. It's a short psalm, but it's interesting. There's two parts to this psalm. The first two verses are apparently an exhortation sung by the worshipers in the temple at night to the priests and the people who make sacrifices that they should bless the Lord and praise the Lord. And then the third verse is apparently a response, a blessing sung by the priests to the people. So let's read this. Behold, again, this is from the people to the priests. Behold, bless the Lord, all you servants of the Lord, who by night stand in the house of the Lord. Lift up your hands in the sanctuary and bless the Lord. And so they're exhorting the people who are there at night in the sanctuary, in the temple, to bless the Lord. And then the priests sing back to the people, the Lord who made heaven and earth, bless you from Zion. Bless you from Zion. Can you imagine an opening night service where the people sing to the minister and then the minister sings back to the people? Interesting thought. Now, there was always a night crew at the temple, and they were there to keep the candelabra burning and provide security for the holy place. But it's interesting that this night crew is only mentioned here in the 15th Song of Ascents, which would correspond to the opening night of the Feast of Tabernacles. Like I said, if we start counting with Psalm 120 on the Day of Trumpets, then the 15th song would be able to be sung at the opening night of the Feast of Tabernacles. And we see night services specifically mentioned here. Notice the priests, the Levites, and the people are specifically mentioned in the temple at night. The New Testament Church of God is composed of spiritual royal priests. We should also be together to worship and sing to God this special night. Let's also go over to Isaiah chapter 30. Isaiah chapter 30 and verse 29. Isaiah 30 and verse 29. It says here, you shall have a song as in the night when a holy festival is kept, and gladness of heart as when one goes with a flute to come into the mountain of the Lord, to the mighty one of Israel. So again, this seems to be another indication of a night service on a holy festival where people would sing to God. So again, we think this is another possible connection to an opening night service on the Feast of Tabernacles. I would like to suggest an action as we come forward and prepare for the Feast of Tabernacles, and like I said, in about 3 months. I would like to encourage each of us to read the songs of ascent or going up, starting with Psalm 120 on the Day of Trumpets, and then read the next psalm in succession, one per day, until we read Psalm 134 on the opening night of the Feast of Tabernacles. This will hopefully help us all to get into the frame of mind of the pilgrims as they went up to the feast and build excitement as we approach the Feast of Tabernacles. So let's be in tune with the Bible and the indications that we have that God wants us to not only keep the Feast of Tabernacles, but to appear before him at opening night services as indicated by Psalm 134. Let's sing with our whole heart as we open the feast.